The old Blackwood Manor had always been a local legend, whispered about in hushed tones. Its dark history, a tapestry woven with madness and disappearances. But on a night when the rain lashed against the windows like a furious phantom, and the wind howled a mournful dirge, the legends felt less like folklore and more like a chilling premonition. A single flickering light in its highest tower, unseen for decades, beckoned with an irresistible, terrifying promise, pulling Dr. Aris Thorne, Lena Petrova, and Marcus Mac Riley into its cold, ancient embrace, a promise of truths far darker than any they had imagined. That Dr. Aris Thorne, a man whose reputation as a skeptical parapsychologist was as formidable as his intellect, adjusted his glasses, his gaze fixed on the manor's imposing silhouette. "Another night, another debunking," he murmured, a hint of weary confidence in his voice, though a subtle tremor in his hand betrayed the personal demons that drove his relentless pursuit of scientific explanation. He'd seen countless haunted locations, each one yielding to logic and reason. And Blackwood Manor, despite its formidable reputation, would be no different. Lena Petrova, a young journalist with an uncanny intuition, shivered, pulling her rain-soaked jacket tighter. "I don't know, Aris," she said, her voice barely audible over the drumming rain on the car roof. "There's something about this place. It feels heavy, like it's holding its breath." Her past experiences with the inexplicable had left her with a sensitivity to atmospheres, a sixth sense that screamed a warning even as her professional curiosity urged her forward. Marcus Mac Riley, ex-military and a pragmatic tech specialist, of their trio, grunted, checking the battery on his infrared camera. "Heavy or not, it's just an old house, Lena. Probably drafts and creaking timbers," he stated, his tone firm, though his eyes darted nervously towards the manor's darkened facade. He preferred tangible threats, things he could analyze and neutralize, but the oppressive silence that seemed to precede their arrival at Blackwood Manor was a different kind of enemy, one he couldn't quite grasp. The gravel driveway crunched under their tires, leading them through a tunnel of ancient, gnarled trees that clawed at the stormy sky, their branches skeletal against the flashes of lightning. The air grew colder, thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic and faintly sweet, a scent that made Lena's stomach churn uneasily. The manor loomed before them, a monstrous shadow against the bruised sky. It's broken. Windows like vacant eyes staring into the storm dot as they stepped out of the car. The wind snatched at their clothes, and the rain intensified, a relentless assault that seemed to welcome them to their doom. The flickering light in the highest tower, now more distinct, pulsed with an eerie rhythm, like a distorted heartbeat. "See? Just a faulty wire, probably," Aris said, forcing a chuckle. But even he couldn't ignore the unsettling regularity of the flicker, too deliberate for a mere electrical malfunction. The massive oak door, weathered and warped, groaned open, with a sound like a dying beast, revealing an abyss of impenetrable darkness within. The air inside was stagnant, heavy with the dust of ages and a pervasive scent of decay, a cloying sweetness that made them all subtly nauseous. Their flashlights cut through the gloom, revealing a grand yet decaying foyer draped in cobwebs. and shrouded in an oppressive silence that swallowed the distant sounds of the storm. "Well, this is certainly atmospheric," Lena whispered, her voice tight with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Her flashlight beam danced across peeling wallpaper and dust-shrouded furniture, revealing a grandeur that had long since succumbed to neglect. The silence felt unnatural, too profound for a house of this size, as if the very air refused to carry sound. Suddenly, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper brushed past Teresa's ear, a fleeting sensation like cold breath. He spun around, his flashlight beam sweeping the empty space behind him. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice sharper than he intended, his scientific detachment momentarily cracking. He tried to dismiss it as the wind, a draft, anything but what his instincts were screaming. Mac, setting up a tripod for his thermal camera, paused, his brow furrowed. "Hear what, Aris?" "Just the rain outside." He looked at Aris, then at Lena, a flicker of concern in his eyes. The rational explanations were already starting to feel thin, stretched taut against the growing unease that permeated the very foundations of Blackwood Manor, a place that felt less like a house and more like a waiting tomb. The manor's true nature began to reveal itself not through grand, theatrical displays, but through insidious whispers and subtle manipulations, targeting the raw nerves of their deepest fears. The air grew impossibly heavy, thick with a malevolence that seemed to press down on their very souls, and the flickering light in the tower pulsed with a frantic rhythm, mirroring the accelerating beat of their terrified hearts. This was no mere haunting. It was a psychological siege, designed to unravel them from the inside out. As they ventured into the sprawling library, its shelves still lined with decaying, leather-bound tomes, Aris saw it. A faint, translucent figure shimmering at the periphery of his vision, a child with long dark hair, her eyes wide and pleading. "Daddy, don't leave me," a whisper, thin as a spider's silk, seemed to caress his ear, sending a jolt of pure, agonizing grief through him. It was his daughter Lily, who had died years ago, a tragedy he had never truly overcome. He blinked, and she was gone, leaving only the oppressive silence and the scent of old paper and something else. Something sickly sweet, like decaying lily. "Aris, are you all right?" Lena's voice cut through his daze, her hand reaching out to steady him. She had seen the flicker in his eyes, the sudden pallor of his face. She herself was battling a growing sense of dread, the whispers around her coalescing into a chorus of tormented voices, speaking of atrocities, of blood and betrayal, visions of a forgotten ritual playing out in her mind's eye. Mac, meanwhile, was struggling with his equipment. His thermal camera flickered erratically, then died, plunging his immediate vicinity into deeper shadow. He heard it then, distinct and chilling, the roar of gunfire, the screams of men, the desperate cries of his comrades from a long-ago mission gone wrong. "No, get down!" he yelled, instinctively dropping to a crouch, his hand flying to where his weapon should have been, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Mac, what are you doing?" Aris shouted, snapping out of his own hallucination, his voice echoing in the vast, silent room. He saw the raw terror on Mac's face, the unseeing eyes, and a cold dread began to settle in his stomach. This wasn't just a haunting. It was a targeted assault designed to break them, to exploit their most vulnerable points. Lena, her own mind reeling from the visions, tried to reach Mac, but a sudden violent gust of wind, seemingly from nowhere, slammed a heavy oak door shut, the resounding crash echoing through the manor. The sound was deafening, a physical shockwave that vibrated through the floorboards, making them all jump. The room plunged into near-total darkness as their flashlights, one by one, began to flicker and die, batteries drained by an unseen force. "My equipment's failing, all of it." Mac stammered, his voice laced with panic, fumbling with his dead flashlight. The sounds of battle intensified around him, a cacophony of terror that seemed to originate from within his own skull, pushing him closer to the brink of madness. He was losing his grip, the solid ground of his reality crumbling beneath. Him, Aris, despite his own terror, tried to maintain a semblance of control. "Stay calm, it's trying to disorient us, to isolate us," he yelled, his voice strained. But even as he spoke, he felt a surge of paranoia, a chilling suspicion that Lena and Mac were not truly seeing or hearing what he was, that they might be part of the manor's elaborate deception, or worse, already compromised. "How can I be calm when I'm seeing things, Aris? Hearing things that aren't there?" Lena cried, her voice trembling, her eyes wide with fear, darting around the encroaching darkness. She could feel the ancient spirits pressing in, their cold, spectral fingers brushing against her skin, whispering secrets of their demise, drawing her deeper into their tormented past. The air grew colder, a biting chill that seeped into their bones, and the whispers returned, no longer faint, but distinct, guttural, forming into a chorus of unseen voices that seemed to mock their dwindling sanity. "Join us, ... join us, ... They hissed, slithering through the darkness, wrapping around their minds like icy tendrils, pulling them deeper into the manor's malevolent embrace. Aris clutched his dead flashlight, his knuckles white. The scientific explanations were gone, replaced by a raw, primal fear. He knew with a horrifying certainty that they were trapped, isolated by the storm and by an entity that fed on their fear, slowly eroding their sanity, preparing them for something far worse than death. The manor was a living, breathing nightmare, and they were its prey. The line between reality and nightmare blurred completely. The manor no longer a decaying structure, but a sentient entity, its walls pulsating with a dark, hungry energy, its very air thick with the stench of fear and decay. The whispers transformed into guttural snarls, the fleeting shadows solidified into menacing forms, and the oppressive malevolence crushed their spirits, pushing them past the breaking point. Elias felt his mind fraying at the edges, the logical part of his brain desperately clinging to reason while the primal fear screamed for escape. A chilling wail echoed from the upper reaches of the manor, a sound of unimaginable agony and fury that tore through the air, making their ears ring and their teeth ache. It was a sound that seemed to rip through the fabric of their sanity, leaving them disoriented and trembling. Mac, his face a mask of unadulterated terror, stumbled, falling to his knees. His hands clamped over his ears, his body racked with silent sobs as the phantom sounds of battle intensified around him. "Mac, get up, we have to move." Reese yelled, his voice raw and desperate, trying to pull his friend to his feet, but Mac was unresponsive, lost in a catatonic state of terror, his eyes staring blankly into the void, consumed by his internal demons. Lena, her own mind reeling from vivid visions of the manor's past atrocities, could only whimper, pressing herself against Reese, her body shaking uncontrollably. "What is this place, Reese?" Lena choked out, her voice barely a whisper, tears streaming down her face. Her gaze was fixed on the darkness above, as if she could see the source of the torment, an unseen horror descending upon them. Reese felt a cold dread seep into his bones, a certainty that they were no longer just exploring an old building, but had stumbled into a realm where the laws of nature did not apply, where something ancient and hungry had awakened that suddenly. The air around them grew impossibly heavy, as if an invisible weight was pressing down, suffocating them. Reese felt a chilling touch on his shoulder, a cold skeletal caress that sent a jolt of pure terror through him. He spun around, his dead flashlight useless, but found nothing. Yet the sensation lingered, a phantom touch that made his skin crawl, a horrifying confirmation that the entity was now physically manifesting, its presence undeniable, its breath a putrid gust on his neck. "It's here! It's right here!" Reese screamed, his voice raw with terror, his mind teetering on the brink of madness. He could feel its malevolent gaze, a towering shadow that loomed over them, its presence a suffocating weight in the already oppressive air. The psychological horror was complete, his perception of reality shattered, replaced by a terrifying, visceral nightmare that consumed his every thought. Mac, jolted by Reese's scream, suddenly scrambled to his feet, his eyes wild and unfocused, his movements jerky and unnatural. "Get away from me! Get away!" He shrieked, flailing his arms wildly, but his voice was distorted, deeper, not entirely his own. He then bolted, not towards the door, but deeper into the manor, his frantic footsteps echoing through the labyrinthine corridors, growing fainter and fainter until they were swallowed by the oppressive silence, leaving Reese and Lena alone in the terrifying void. "Mac, no!" Lena cried out, her voice filled with despair, but it was too late. He was gone, consumed by the darkness, a victim of his own terror and the manor's insidious influence. His mind shattered, his body perhaps now a vessel for the ancient evil. Reese felt a surge of guilt, a crushing weight of responsibility for leading them into this nightmare, for dismissing their fears, for underestimating the true horror that resided within Blackwood Manor. The manor seemed to sigh then, a long drawn-out sound of satisfaction, as if it had claimed its first offering. The air grew even colder, and the whispers returned, no longer just murmurs, but distinct guttural words, a language of pure malevolence that seemed to seep into Reese's very soul, poisoning his thoughts, twisting his perceptions. He could hear his daughter's voice, distorted and mocking, calling his name, urging him to join her in the darkness. Reese clutched Lena's hand, his grip bone-crushing, his eyes darting frantically around the oppressive darkness. He knew, with a horrifying certainty, that they were next, that the manor would not rest until it had consumed them all, body and soul. The rain outside continued its relentless drumming, a morbid soundtrack to their impending doom, and the manor itself seemed to vibrate with a dark, hungry energy, its ancient timbers groaning in anticipation of their final, desperate struggle. A sudden deafening crash from the manor's deepest foundations, followed by a guttural shriek that seemed to tear through the very fabric of the air, momentarily stunned the malevolent presence that had been closing in on Reese and Lena. It was a brief window, a fleeting moment of reprieve, but Reese seized it with a desperate, primal instinct for survival. This was their chance, their only chance, to break free from the manor's suffocating grip, to escape the unseen horrors that lurked in its depths. Now, run, Lena, run! Reese yelled, his voice raw and hoarse, pulling her along, half dragging her. Through the debris-strewn darkness, they stumbled over rotting planks and dislodged stones, their dead flashlights useless, navigating by the faint, eerie glow from the highest tower, which now pulsed with an alarming intensity. The manor seemed to resist their escape, its floorboards groaning beneath their frantic footsteps, its walls seemingly shifting, trying to trap them within its decaying embrace. Behind them, the wailing intensified, a sound of pure, unbridled fury, closer now, as if the entity had recovered from its momentary distraction and was now in hot pursuit, its whispers forming into a chilling, distorted roar. Reese could feel its presence, a chilling cold that clung to their backs, a suffocating weight that pressed down on them, urging them to surrender, to join the tormented chorus of the manor's past victims. He pushed harder, his lungs burning, his legs aching, driven by the desperate hope of seeing the outside world, of breathing fresh, unpolluted air again. They burst through a hidden passage Lena had instinctively found, a secret door, disguised as a bookshelf in the library, which splintered and crashed behind them, the sound swallowed by the unrelenting downpour. The rain, once a symbol of dread, now felt like a cleansing balm, washing over their terror-stricken faces. They didn't stop, didn't look back, running blindly through the mud and driving rain, their only thought to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the cursed manor, its skeletal silhouette now a terrifying monument in the stormy night. They ran until their legs gave out, collapsing in a sodden heap on the side of the winding forest road, gasping for breath, their bodies trembling uncontrollably. Lena was sobbing hysterically, her face buried in her hands. The images of the manor's horrors burned into her mind, the whispers of the ancient ritual still echoing in her ears. Reese, though physically exhausted, felt a chilling emptiness, a profound sense of loss, and a terrifying realization that Mac was gone, swallowed by the darkness they had so foolishly sought. The first rays of dawn, weak and watery, began to pierce through the heavy clouds, casting a pale, ghostly light over the landscape. The manor, now visible in the gray light, looked no less menacing, its broken windows like vacant eyes staring out at them, a silent testament to the horrors they had endured. Reese shivered, not from the cold, but from the lingering chill that seemed to cling to his very soul, a reminder of the malevolent presence he had encountered, a presence that had touched his deepest fears. They were found hours later by a passing motorist, shivering and incoherent, their clothes soaked and torn, their faces etched with a terror that no words could adequately describe. They tried to explain, to recount the unimaginable horrors they had witnessed, but their words were fragmented, nonsensical, dismissed as the ramblings of shock and exposure. How could anyone believe the unspeakable truths that lay hidden within? The Blackwood Manor, the ancient evil that fed on fear? Mac was never found. The search parties scoured the manor and the surrounding woods for days, but found no trace of him, as if he had simply vanished into thin air, another soul consumed by the whisper and shadow. The official report cited disappearance under unexplained circumstances, but Reese and Lena knew the truth. A chilling reality that would forever haunt their waking hours and infest their nightmares. The manor had claimed him, another offering to its insatiable hunger. Reese and Lena returned to their lives, but they were changed, irrevocably scarred by the night in the manor. The sound of rain, once a comforting lullaby, now brought with it a creeping dread, a chilling reminder of the whispers and screams that had echoed through the decaying timbers. They would often find themselves staring into the shadows, convinced they could see fleeting, translucent figures, hear faint, mournful cries carried on the wind, forever haunted by the malevolence of Blackwood Manor. And sometimes on particularly dark and rainy nights, when the wind howled and the world outside was consumed by the storm, Reese and Lena would swear they could hear it, a faint, guttural growl, carried on the wind from the direction of Blackwood Manor, a chilling whisper of their names, a haunting echo that promised the manor was still waiting, still hungry, its ancient evil patiently biding its time for the next rainy night, its flickering light a beacon of eternal torment.